All right, welcome to the Sweet Talk. Today is Monday, May 25th, 2021. I am your host, Kim Matina, and today I have on my show the very first time, debut of Mr. Danny Contopoulos. He
Hello.
comes to us from Long Island, Deer Park, New York. So, we have Eastern Standard Time. So we're in the same time zone. He's also a science teacher. He's been teaching for 18 years. He started off teaching biology. And after that, he transitioned over into chemistry. So I'm really happy to have you on the show. I know you are also a Google Certified Educator Level 2 and you're thinking about going for your trainer cert. So if you need help with that, just let me know. So welcome to the show, Danny.
How you doing? Well, I'm happy to be here. So, yeah, should I just start?
Yeah. So,
All right.
well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay.
So
So
I
yeah, I started.
introduced you, but
Yeah, I started teaching biology and chemistry after a couple of years, and I found myself looking at grading labs, and labs can be like very tedious, and there's lots of questions that you want to ask them, but you also want to grade them correctly. And so I kept on finding myself with these stacks of papers and just going through them and maybe picking one or two questions to grade and seeing if they had the right answer. And I just kept on reading the same answer over and over and over again, which ended up being very tedious. And I found it repetitive. And I was like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I'm like, well, computers do repetitive things ad nauseum without getting tired. So, and they can actually grade like the whole lab, and that would be great. So I figured out that you can use Google Forms to do things like this, where they grade a whole bunch of entries and submissions very quickly, very easily. And so that's kind of what I do in my classes. I use Google Forms for pretty much everything: homeworks, labs. This year I've been using for quizzes for virtual students. So I've been really, I've been fortunate actually before this whole pandemic went down, to be pretty comfortable with Google Forms, so that when I had to transition to it, I was able to do that pretty seamlessly.
So when you create a Google form, do you copy an existing form or do you start scratch?
So I started. Depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing if I do a homework assignments, most of the time are some sort of multiple choice questions. So I have a form and a template that I can actually show you, and that I can just copy over and over again for any homework assignment, which makes it really, really easy to grade and really easy to assign. The labs, I've been developing my labs for years, and I've been kind of fleshing them out as I go. And so that's pretty intense and complicated to actually get into it right now. And then my quizzes I make from scratch. This year I'm making them from scratch and copying questions in there and kind of messing around with them too. So.
Okay. All right. So why don't you show us what you
Sure. So
do?
I'll go into, let me share my screen. Just make sure you can see my screen here. You got me?
Yep, I see your screen.
All right. So if I want to start a brand new form, there's a little shortcut, forms.new. That'll start a brand new form. That's a nice little shortcut to start a brand new form. I usually title it with whatever I want to use the form with. So I'll say, let's say homework 1. Homework 1. And this is the file name that'll end up in my Google Drive. If you click over here on this title right here is what the students will see if you assign it to Google Classroom. So I can change this to something else, homework 1.5 or something, or whatever title I want to use. Okay. So what I normally do is I'll go to the settings up here in the cog, and I'll click collect emails. Depending on whether I want them to give me more than one submission, I do that on homeworks where they can submit multiple submissions and they can correct their answers and hopefully learn from their mistakes. Or I can just click limit to one response in the case of a quiz or something like that. In the presentation tab, I'll show the progress bar, which will tell them how far along they are in the homework or the lab or the quiz. Sometimes I'll shuffle the questions if it's a quiz. If it's a homework, I'll just leave it unshuffled. And then I could actually make this into a quiz, and that allow me to put an answer key and have Google Forms actually do the grading for me. I don't actually use this option as far as having it grade for me. I use an extension called Flubaroo, which I'll show in a little bit. Because it has some nice features in Flubaroo that Google Forms doesn't really have. I also this year been using the locked mode, which allows my students at home to not allow to navigate to a different tab and look answers up. So that's something that I've done.
Now, you know that lock mode is only good for managed Chromebooks, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So we all have, we are one-to-one with
oh, okay.
in my district. So I'm going to turn that back off, so we don't have to worry about that right now. I'll leave that as a quiz. And so the first thing I usually do is even though I'm collecting their email addresses, I'll also collect their names. So I do last name. It's a short answer. Google's nice that they actually kind of guess what you're looking for. And I'll do first name, and I usually separate those because I use a lot of the spreadsheets. I'll export all my answers to spreadsheets, and I'll be able to sort based on last name or first name. I also do student ID numbers, period numbers, things like that. But I'll leave that for now. If I use the shuffle option, then all of these get shuffled up, and I normally don't want to have names shuffled in with questions. So what I'll use is the section header, and I'll create a brand new page in my form. So that allows me to have these names and these identifiers separate from all my questions. So
that's a good tip.
The multiple choice. So that way, that the name doesn't get mixed up with my questions. So then I want to start my quiz or my homework, or if I'm doing a lab or something like that, I'll make another section for, let's say, multiple choice. And so I'll click here to make a new question. And so I found different ways and different things ways to add questions to the form. And I made up a little worksheet for, again, a chemistry teacher, so it's very heavy in chemistry here. But what I could do is
really quick, what grades do you teach again?
Mostly sophomores and juniors.
Okay.
Yeah,
all
so
right. High school. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So if I wanted to add this first question to the form, I can just copy, Control C. I do use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So Control C, and then I'll paste it in there. Okay, I might have to do some editing there because it's a PDF. And then I can do all the choices, copy all the choices, and put them in individually. I like to remove the A, B's, C's, and D's because you can actually shuffle the choices as well. So it will actually these will all get shuffled up. If you wanted to put in your answer key, you can put in which one is the correct answer, and then you can use the Google form to actually correct your form. But again, I don't actually do that. I use Flubaroo.
Yeah. I didn't know that you can copy the 4 multiple choices and then paste it in there, and then it separates all 4 of them out. That's a nice little trick there. Yeah,
and sometimes, I mean, if they're laid out like top to bottom like this, it works really well. Sometimes I don't have any of these where they're, 1, 2, 3, 4, like next to each other.
Yeah.
But there's just some formatting that you might have to do sometimes. So that's, just something to get used to. If I want to add another question now, if you look at this, I made this up just to show you. This right here has a diagram, and so doing diagrams is a little bit more challenging in that you'd have to sort of take a screenshot, and there's different keyboard shortcuts that you can use for screenshots. Right now I'm on a desktop computer, and so desktop on a PC would be Windows Shift key S, and so that kind of grays out, and then you can kind of highlight.
You can kind of zone in on what you want.
And you can copy that into a image editor and save it as a file. And then on your form, you would click over here and you can bring in, you click on browse, find the file, and edit and import it. I'm a big fan of the Chromebook snapshot tool, which is it's like Control Shift and then I got to look at it.
It's like the switcher.
Window change, right?
Yeah.
And that one's really nice because it saves it into your Google Drive, and then you can just search for it in your Google Drive to put the image into the question. And so I had to put that into here and say, given the particle diagram below, and then I put the image in there. I don't have it saved right now. And then I can do this again, the same questions. So that's another way to do that with the images. Another thing you could do is just take a screenshot of the whole question.
Right. And then just insert it in there.
And just insert it in there and just say A, B, C, C, and D. And then the students would just choose their choice.
That's a good idea too.
So they can just, you can do that. Somebody, this question right here has each choice has an image. So you would have to take a screenshot of each image. And then, in the choice, add the image next to that.
You know what I use for screenshots, Danny? Yeah. I use that Chrome extension Nimbus.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that because, I don't know, it's easier like for me to just take the screenshot. I can edit right in there, and then it saves it right to, my device.
Yeah. I've never played with that. I'm not really familiar.
Oh, I would highly recommend it.
All right, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, take a look at it.
Yeah. So, I found that like adding the questions like verbatim and copying and pasting them started to become very tedious. And I use pretty much the same worksheets for homework or for, over and over again. A lot of people have the same worksheets that they use. And so if they are all multiple choice, I said, why don't I just post the PDF or take a screenshot of the whole worksheet, and then I can just, say question one, A, B, C, or D, right? And question two, and it would be very general, and I can make copies of that. But then I found, I'll show you this. This is one of my favorite things ever. So if I say multiple choice grid, okay, and I'll say this is homework 1 questions or something like that. And so I would make question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This worksheet only has 7 questions in column A, B, C, and D. Okay, and then when I click off of this, what I have is basically a grid.
Yeah.
And so that ends up being, I don't know if anybody else uses Scantrons, but this is basically a Scantron.
Yeah.
And what's really nice is, like, again, if you choose to use the Google form to grade it for you, you put in your answer key and it's just, placing your answers in just like that. So it's really simple to use in terms of grading, in terms of multiple choice.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I usually don't use the grid just because I don't have questions laid out like that, but I'm glad that at least you're showcasing it because other people may not even be aware of it or even how to use it.
Yeah, it's saved me a lot of time, and almost all my homeworks is just a template just like this. I don't even have these questions in here. I just have the identifying questions where they put their name in, and then depending on how many multiple choice questions there are, A, B, C, and D, and the students know, go to the PDF and then put your answers into the Scantron.
So the kids have the PDF open and then they toggle back and forth.
Correct. So okay. I might even, like, in there's another choice here, description. I might put the link to the PDF right here, so they can click on the PDF, have that open on the side, and then do all their work, either print it out or they can do it on paper or whatever, and then they can just enter their answers into the grid.
That's actually a really good idea. You're saving a lot of time, and then it's general.
I try to keep it as general as possible, so that way I can reuse it over and over and over again. And I can just add more questions if I had to, or remove questions depending on how long or short the homework is.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that idea. And then each row gets assigned 1 point, right?
Yes. So
That's
if you do it, if you use Google Forms, you can,
yeah.
assign as many points as you want. It's the same thing as just a
Hmm.
question like this, except it's all together in one big, huge question.
Right, right. So it's seven. It's really seven. It's
7
worth
questions in one.
seven
Right.
questions or 7 points. Yep.
Right.
Okay. Cool.
So that's basically how to set up a general Google form in order to collect the information. So I use Flubaroo to grade this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of make a submission here, just so we have something to grade. I haven't really gone over the answers or anything like that. So let me just put in a submission here. And you see that got scrambled over here. And then again, we don't know what these questions are, but I'm just going to make up some answers as if the student was. Some students, that's how they fill out their answer. There's
Okay.
answers.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Now I have view score because this is set to a quiz, but I don't have the answer key really set in there. But I want to show you how you grade this with Flubaroo. So what I'll do is click on responses, and I export this to a spreadsheet. And this will create a brand new spreadsheet in the folder that the Google form is in. Right now, since I use that shortcut Google forms.new, it's in my main Google Drive. And I like to keep my Google Drive somewhat organized, so I would probably move that into a folder that's useful. But for now, I'm just going to do that, create it in my main Google Drive folder. And so here is the first submission. And you can see that the first, last name, first name. Okay, this is the first question that I copied and pasted in there. This was the multiple choice question. And then here are the grid answers. So homework 1, question 1, homework 1, question 2, and so on and so forth. Does that all make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So if a student goes in there now, I usually will fill out the answer key. So the first one will be the answer key.
Yeah.
So I'll do the.
That's how I usually do it too.
And then I'll so let's do a student here, student 1. Oops. I gotta change that to, sorry about that. Okay, so student 1. And so they get that one right, and they get that one wrong, and so on. I don't remember what the answers were here, but we'll just make up all right, and so if I go to the form, of course, it's the same email address because I'm the one that's entering that. Here, because again, I set it to the quiz mode, it automatically grades it with the quiz mode. But using Flubaroo, I'm going to grade this, and we can compare the answers. It should come out to be the same. So Flubaroo is an add-on that you can get from the marketplace. When you first initially download it, you have to accept all the permissions, and every spreadsheet that you use it on, you have to enable Flubaroo on that worksheet. So now I can use Flubaroo on this, and so now once I go to Flubaroo, it has a whole bunch of options here. I want to grade this assignment. And it brings me through the grading process. So what I have to do now is go through all of my questions and see which ones I want to actually count and which ones I want to grade and what points I want to assign to it. So I'm going to just ignore this score column. This is because I have it set to quiz mode, and this is the Google Forms actually scores it for me. So I'm just going to ignore that for now. The last name and first name identifies the student. And then, so each one of these I want to grade as 1 point out of 7. And so it'll do the math for me and give me a percentage at the end. Okay. So I'll continue. And so I want to set that first submission as my answer key. I'll usually just, the last name I'll put as answer and the first name I'll put as key, just to identify it. And then all the student submissions will be listed here, but I want to make sure that mine is the one that's the answer key.
Yeah, so you have to go through your own quiz and take your own quiz.
Basically, yes.
Yep.
You take your own quiz and set the answers. What's nice about that is you can actually go back and change your answer key if you mess up, or there's an error in the answer key. You can go back and regrade the whole thing without having to
Get students to resubmit.
Exactly. Yep. And so once I click on that, it'll grade it. Okay, grading is complete, and you can see here's the student number 1, how many points they get, okay, and what they got right and what they got wrong. Okay, and you get a whole, almost like a statistical analysis of how many, what percentage of students got each question right. So item analysis.
Yeah, so the feedback that you get is better, I think, using the Flubaroo add-on.
I believe so. I use the Flubaroo add-on. I look at those percentages like, okay, these are questions that I have to actually review. And I believe that Google Forms has something similar to that, but I find this a lot more just right all together in one spot rather than scroll.
Now, when you use Flubaroo, isn't there a way that you can grade manually?
Yes, they call it grade by hand. So if there's a short answer question or something that you want to grade, so if I go back to Flubaroo and I go to advanced, actually I'm going to go to regrade. Let's say, yes, let's regrade this, and let's say that first question, instead of being a multiple choice question, is a free response question. So what I want to do is grade by hand. I'm going to set that to grade by hand. Okay. And so what that'll do, I'll go through this again. The nice thing is Flubaroo also remembers a lot of the choices that you've already chosen, so I don't have to choose my answer key again. It's already there. Okay, and so now it'll set this first question to grade by hand. It's regrading. Okay, and so now you can see that there's no number value there yet. And so what I can do is go to Flubaroo and grade questions by hand, and that'll bring up a new window. And so that's the question. You can have multiple questions that you can grade by hand. They'll all be listed here. This is the first student. You can go student by student, you scroll to the next student or back. Okay, and their answer will be here, and you can either give it 1 point or 0 points or whatever number of points that you assign to it. You can give it partial credit or whatever.
And then you can give them feedback in there.
Yep.
And then have email, right?
Yeah. You can do, great.
Do you use that? Do you do that or no?
I do not. Okay. So this is where the power of Flubaroo comes in that I actually use a little bit of spreadsheet coding to grade my free response questions.
Okay. Do you give them feedback?
Yes, no? I can give them a lot of feedback on that. Well, let me actually go before I get to that, because that's the question that everybody asks. How do you do free response questions? And it's it is possible, but it takes a little bit of know-how and it takes a little bit of tweaking and tinkering. But like I said, before I get to that, I want to show how you can just share the grades to the students. So there is a thing in Flubaroo where I can share the grades, what they got right, what they got wrong. Okay, so you can usually share it by email, and what you can do is you can share via email or you can share via Google Drive. They make a doc that gets sent out. You can include all the questions. What I do for my homeworks is I don't include all the questions. I only include the ones that they got wrong. So they know, okay, I got these questions right. These are the wrong ones. These are the ones I have to fix. And they'll go back and resubmit the whole thing, basically redo the homework, and it's how they kind of practice doing the questions, and hopefully get the questions right the next time.
So you mean to tell? So, because you're refreshing my memory with Flubaroo. It's been a while for me. So, you can, like, I'm in middle school, so the kids don't have email addresses. Okay. So you said if you change and toggle that email up, that option number 1.
Yep. Oh, this one here?
Yeah. If you toggle that, what is the option?
It's email address question. In order to share, they have to have.
Oh, so that's pulling from the field that they entered their email address.
If you can see my arrow right here, this is where my.
I gotcha. Okay. And then, so you said something about sharing a doc.
Right. So you can have them, it can actually send an email to the student, or you can have them create a doc and it would share the doc with them.
And so the doc has to, do you have to create like a template for that? I don't remember.
I don't believe so. I don't actually use that option, but
Okay.
I believe it actually has the template for, whatever email they send is the same template that they make a doc out of.
Okay. All right.
I believe
Yeah,
that's how
I
it
don't,
works.
it's been a while since I
Yeah.
used Flubaroo.
Here I don't include the all questions or correct questions. I only include the incorrect questions. That way, again, they can resubmit those questions and hopefully get them right. I don't include students' responses because, again, I send them out via email so the students have a copy of it.
Yeah.
So they could just send it to their friend and say, here are all the answers to the homework.
Yep.
And I don't include the answer key for homeworks. So. And you can give them a little sticker if they got 100 or whatnot. I'm going to bypass that right now. And you can say, hey, everybody did a great job. And you can, send a message to everybody. So, and then that would share. So that's going to send the email to anybody who has not received an email. So one grade was successfully shared to me. And so that's how Flubaroo works as far as grading multiple choice questions. Pretty straightforward. You can probably achieve the same thing with Google Forms. Like I said, Flubaroo has a couple of little bells and whistles that Google Forms doesn't. So you're interested in the free response question. Is that correct?
Yes, I want to see how you do
All right. So here we go. I wasn't planning on going into it, but we'll go into it now.
Oh, that's okay.
All right,
If you don't, are you sure?
No, it's fine. No,
Okay.
great. Free response. So in my form, obviously, I would have a free response question. I'm going to just make a column here for my free response questions. And as a science teacher, we have various kind of questions that are possible in free response where a student might just give a number, right? And I want to check to see if that number is within the bounds, within the range of acceptable answers. So let's say the correct answer is 4 and the student says 5, right? I'm trying to think of a question where this might be applicable. How many valence electrons does carbon have, right? And so 4 would be the correct answer, 5 would be incorrect. So what I have found is instead of grading this column, I create a column right next to it. And then I'll call it grading free response. I'll do this in the
So this is
spreadsheet.
after you do your Flubaroo and you grade the multiple choice questions, right?
Yes. Before I even grade grade it with Flubaroo, I'll do this in anticipation that I'm going to use Flubaroo to grade.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'll say is, and so I'll do my spreadsheet coding, and I'll say equals means we're going to do a formula here, and I'll say if this response, this O2, whatever's in O2, is equal to 4, then say it's correct. If not, the comma is incorrect. So here's the format of that question or that response. So when I press enter, because that's 4, that's going to be correct. Okay.
Right. That one's your answer key.
That's my answer key, and it should be correct, right? If I copy, I can copy and paste. I can drag this down. I can fill down. There's a bunch of ways to bring this formula down here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. And so what this is doing is checking O3. Is that 4? Is that equal to 4? No, it's not. It's 5, so it's incorrect.
Okay. Okay, I gotcha. Yep.
Okay, so now when I use Flubaroo, instead of grading column O here, I'll grade column P.
Okay.
And so it is grading this free response. And
so in Flubaroo, how are you?
So I'll open Flubaroo.
Go ahead.
Yep. So I'll regrade it. Okay. I'm going to overwrite my grades. And so you'll notice that these 2 questions are now here.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll ignore the free response, but I'm going to grade the formula that I created.
Right.
And so if I continue, Okay, it'll check that column to make sure that it matches my answer key. And if the answer key says correct and the student says incorrect, they won't get credit.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah,
So,
because the row, the answer key row has the right.
right. So if I change this to 4, the formula will automatically change to correct, and that person will get credit.
Okay. Ah, that's clever.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, again, it could be within an acceptable range, right? So in science, let's say the acceptable range is anywhere between 3 and 6. So both of these would be correct, right?
Yeah.
So now, again, I got to do some spreadsheet coding here. So I'm going to change this to, and if O2 is greater than 3, comma, and O2 is less than 6, then it's correct. I'm going to copy and paste that down. And so any number between 3 and 6 is going to get credit.
Right. So put 7 in there for the.
Sure. 7.
Yep.
And I mean, you can, whatever the student puts in there, as long as it's between 3 and 6 is going to be correct, which will match my answer key, which is correct, and therefore get credit.
Yeah, that's clever.
So
what about decimals? Does it do?
You can, yeah, absolutely. You can, 3.5, everything that, so it ends up being, let's say 3.2. No, 3.6. Yes.
There you go. Okay.
That's
a clever way. Well, I guess when you have, you have how many students?
Oh, about 100.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to try to find those little shortcuts to help you because, and
like I said, if I'm reading the same answer over and over and over again, I can have the computer just, I have 100 students here. This column is going to keep grading all those students without having me to manually look at every single answer and response and make sure it's within that certain acceptable range. Okay.
So now after it's all done, then you send them the email.
I can send them the email. Yes, that's one of the things, one of the methods that I can share their grade with them. I want to show you just another quick thing. And so that's one type of response that I could get from a student is a numerical response, but I also can get, short free response, like a short sentence or a paragraph. And usually in science, we're looking for keywords. There's certain keywords that if you have these keywords, then you will probably get credit for that, right? So let's say the keyword that I'm looking for is alpha particle. They could say, oh, this particle is charged, whatever, and the correct answer is alpha particle. That's what I'm looking for in their response. Okay, so instead of a numerical value, the only thing I'm going to change in this is just the condition that I'm looking for. And so this is a really slick little formula is number search. It is number search, and I'll explain what it does in a second. But I'm searching for alpha and and the cell that I'm looking for is O2. Okay. So right now it's incorrect because alpha is not there. So the correct particle is alpha.
Ah.
And so it's looking for that one word alpha, right? And so, and the way this works is the search function will look for that word, that string of characters in that cell, and if it finds it, it will return the number character in that string of text. I don't know if that makes sense. So it'll tell you the position at which it starts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It'll count all the way up to here.
Oh, okay. So it's actually telling you the plate, like where it is, like
where it is in that string of text. And so his number is just going to say, is it a number? If it's a number, you have it there. It's great. If it's not there, then you're not going to get a number.
Oh, so it's basically yes or no.
Exactly.
Okay.
True or false.
False.
Right?
Yep.
And so you could just put alpha and it pops up. So that is number search.
I guess it's case sensitive then, right?
No, actually it's not. So if I change that to alpha, Still finds
Oh,
it.
wow. Okay.
If you want it to be case sensitive, then you can just change search to find. And that makes it case sensitive. So if I copy that into here,
Ah, okay.
so, and I've come up with some, I use this, I feel like I'm pretty
Comfortable
confident
with
in
it.
spreadsheet coding. So I've come up with some pretty crazy formulas to search for certain, phrases and whether it has this in it and doesn't have that in it. And there's a lot of conditional, formatting you can do, but this is the basis of grading a free response question. And again, Flubaroo will just grade whether it's correct or incorrect.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because the first row is your answer key. So,
Right. And
huh.
you asked about, feedback. I can say, in incorrect, I can actually type in case sensitive. And so that'll come up as their incorrect answer. Oh, by the way, it's case sensitive. You can actually go, you can search for, hey, maybe you use beta. That beta is not the right answer. This is why. And you can do multiple conditions as to what their answer is and give feedback on every single possible answer that they give you.
So that's actually, that's like a hack, really.
It
Yeah,
is a big hack.
it is definitely. That's clever. I think that's that if more teachers felt comfortable with spreadsheets, they would find it to be really, really helpful.
Yeah,
You know.
I think Alice Keeler. I'm sure you know the name, right?
Yeah.
She just released or she's doing a T-shirt that says "Spreadsheets are always the answer."
Yeah, she's the spreadsheet queen.
And I completely agree. I want that T-shirt.
I'll have to tweet her and let her know that you were meant. She's my friend.
Oh yeah. Um,
I will
the
let her know that you like her
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
T-shirt. I'll let her know. Maybe she'll send you one.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Just one additional thing is that I'll set up this formula ahead of time. I can actually set it up and make sure that it's working properly. But every new submission, this formula actually doesn't go down into the next column.
Right, you have to copy it down, right?
Copy it down, or there's a nice little add-on called Copy Down, which actually will copy any formula that's in row 2 down every time there's a new submission.
Okay.
So that's a really nice and handy thing that'll automatically grade it for you as kids submit. That column will get filled out for you.
Yeah, because I mean, if you had, 100 submissions, that would probably be the easiest way to copy that formula down.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Rather than sit, every time a student submits, you'd have to copy it in there, or wait till they're all done and then fill it down. I would rather just have the computer just copy that formula for me.
Copy it down. Well, you're utilizing every aspect of it to make your job easier. That's for sure.
Yep.
Good for you, because like I said, I think I actually started to totally be honest here, like spreadsheets is not my niche at all.
Right.
So a couple weeks ago, I created this. Are you done sharing your screen or no?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna take. There you go. Now I could see you. I created a game, and I used the spreadsheets, and I used the formulas, multiple formulas, and nested if statements. And
Nice. Yeah.
I took some I populated cells from one tab and put it into another tab based on the answers, and I was like so proud of myself. That was like that was like a learning curve for me.
Yeah.
I believe you. Like when you
I really have to.
those formulas and you get like what you're looking for, it's definitely satisfying.
I have to say that when I grade papers now, I don't grade papers. I spend the time that I would spend grading, I spend trying to figure out how to grade. Writing those formulas, and that's sort of like it's a puzzle to me. It's like, okay, how do I get this to grade it the way I want it to be graded?
Yeah.
And every single kid gets and there's accountability because every single question gets graded, as opposed to like picking a few questions here and there. The computer's grading it all for me. Okay, I just have to set it up ahead of time, and so there's a lot of investment ahead of time. But but there's a lot of time saving at the end, you know?
That's what I tell people too. If you invest the time in the beginning, you'll get paid back at the end by having that free time. Like,
I'll give you a little bit, another little tip or thing that I do with this. Once I have my Flubaroo homework sheets or labs or whatever, that's a spreadsheet. And I actually have my own grade book, and I import the grades from the homework into my grade book. I don't manually, put the grades in one by one by one by one. It just imports the range of the grades, and it automatically does that. And
yeah, you download it as a CSV file.
no, there's a function in Google Sheets where you can do import range, and you can just point to the link, and it'll actually import the grades right into your grade book for you.
Wow. What grade book are you using?
I use Google. I made up my own grade book.
Oh, you made up your own grade book. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'll pull that in. I could. We actually have Infinite Campus in my district, and but my administrators are nice enough and understand how robust my grade book is that I actually share all the grades with all my parents and all the students, and they can actually access all the grades at any time they enter homework, and they can actually go right into the grade book and see their grade updated immediately.
Wow. Well, that might be another show.
I'm okay with that.
That would be cool. I would be interested to see how you did that. That's cool.
It's
wow.
really it's robust, and it really is a time saver, and I love it. It's made life a lot easier as opposed to manually entering data, which is so tedious.
Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
I'll have to try that. Like next year I'm teaching again. This year I didn't teach at all. I was more like, tech specialist or support person. But next year I'm teaching again. So I'm gonna have to try.
Yeah.
I'll use Google Forms quiz, but I use the response sheet as well with the Flubaroo add-on. And I'm going to have to try to see if I can export that out as a CSV and then import it into the grade book that we're using. We don't have that we're using OnCourse. So I'm going to have to see if there's like a connection there. I'll let you know.
I would say one of the best ways to get really comfortable with spreadsheets is building your own grade book. Having a list of kids, a list of assignments, averaging everything up. Okay, and that's what spreadsheets are great at doing, is dealing with numbers and dealing with a lot of rows of data. So
we have to get more teachers like involved in spreadsheets.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tool.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. Well, thank you, Danny, for sharing all that. I think that was awesome. It was a great demo. You kind of made up your own little workflow and your own little tips and tricks there, and to make your job more efficient and grading. And it was awesome. I'm glad to have you on and that you were able to share that, because I think anytime that you can have I guess share spreadsheets and pay it forward, I think it's a good thing, because you want more people to use it, because if we don't use it, then the kids aren't getting exposed to it, and they need to be exposed to it,
Yes, absolutely.
And it starts, we got to start sooner, not at high school. We got to start in middle school and below in elementary. So, but again, I want to thank you for being on. What I'm going to do really quick is share my screen. And I forgot to put up I will do that in a minute. So, all right. So if you want to visit my website, you can go to thesweettalk.com. That's the SUITE talk.com. And on the homepage, you will see this episode here. You can also listen to the episode on Podbean. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, join the Facebook group, subscribe to it on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts as well. All of my past episodes will be available here on the episode page. You'll see a list of all the episodes with the YouTube link and the show notes. This is actually a spreadsheet in Google Data Studio. That's why it comes up a little bit later to populate. If you would like to check out my Jamboard page, click on the Jamboard link there, and you'll be able to see some information that I have here. Alice Keeler and our new book is coming out on Jamboard. It's called Teaching with Google Jamboard, and it should be out any day now. So stay tuned for information on that. So anyway, well, thank you for being on, Danny. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone found this episode helpful. Until next time, bye.
Bye bye.